Alright, listen to me closely today, because something is happening with Kaspa right now that honestly feels different, it feels important, and it feels like the kind of momentum shift we look back on months from now and say, yeah, that was the moment. That's when the tide started turning. So, Daily Kaspa just shared something seriously exciting. USDC is now live on KaspaBridge. Now yes, this is on testnet for developers right now, but don't underestimate what this means. Kaspa has been talking about stablecoin infrastructure for months, and this is one of the biggest steps they've taken toward making it real. Let me break it down simply. USDC can now be moved between Ethereum Sepolia, BSC testnet and Kaspa test environments like Igra and Kasplex, all using this Hyperlane warp-root system. And what that really means is plug-and-play interoperability. Developers can literally connect their wallet, test transfers, and start building stablecoin-based products on Kaspa's insanely fast block DAG. This is exactly what a DeFi ecosystem needs before it can explode. You need liquidity, you need stability, you need an on-chain currency that isn't moving 10% a day, and Kaspa is finally taking that step. And if you've been following Kaspa for a while, you'll remember back in May when there was a lot of talk about network readiness for stablecoins. And now here we are, quiet progress, no hype, just development. That's why I always tell you, watch the builders, not the noise. From my perspective, this is exactly the kind of foundational upgrade you get before the real value begins to surface. We saw this with Solana, we saw it with Avalanche. You get the stablecoin infrastructure first, everything else builds around that. Everything is pointing to something big. Speaking of setups, and speaking of the market lining itself up like it's preparing for a run, this next story might be the most bullish one of the week. So again from a daily Kaspa, we got the updated Kaspa liquidation heatmap, and this thing basically screams, there's fuel above. The post says all the major liquidity is stacked to the upside, all the way up to about 9 cents. Let that sink in for a second. There's almost nothing left below the current price, which means one thing, the market is not positioned for a downside sweep. You have light leverage below, heavy leverage above, and a price that's been crushed 80% over the last few months. Now whether you love charts or hate charts, you can't ignore this setup. I've been in this space long enough to know, when liquidity piles up above and dries up below, what usually happens? Price drifts up, slowly, then suddenly, momentum shifts, shorts get nervous, and you get that first proper breakout candle that leads to real volatility. We saw it in 2017, we saw it during the COVID crash recovery, we saw it with Cardano multiple times. Crypto loves symmetry, and it loves imbalance. Right now Kaspa is sitting at around 4.1 cents, after months of pain, frustration, criticism, its overposts, all of it. And yet builders keep building, liquidity keeps setting up for an upside move, and the fundamentals only get stronger. This is the kind of quiet compression that leads to big moves when people least expect it. And yes, there are always opposing views. There are skeptics. Some think Kaspa's previous gains already priced in everything. Others think it's just another POW chain, but honestly, POW with internet speed block DAG, that's not something you dismiss. The setup couldn't look better. Now, let's talk about one of the boldest predictions I've seen this cycle, and why it's not as crazy as people think. So, Matthias threw out a wild one, Kaspa to $4 next cycle, a clean 100 times from here. Now first thing, he added not financial advice, and I'll say the same. But let's talk about why people even think numbers like that are possible. Here's his argument in simple terms. Kaspa equals verifiable, trustless, programmable, autonomous, and internet speed. Optional privacy is coming through zero-knowledge opcodes, proof-of-work security, and advanced vProg programmability. Do you know what that sounds like? It sounds like the evolution of Bitcoin, not a competitor, but the next branch. A Bitcoin-class chain without the bottlenecks. And when you think about what Kaspa actually is, a block DAG producing 1 block per second, scaling to 10,000 transactions per second, without breaking decentralization. It starts sounding less like an altcoin and more like a new category. Now, does that guarantee a 100 times? Of course not, but price targets exist for a reason. They represent what people feel the tech might be worth once the rest of the world wakes up. Kaspa already did a 1,000 times from inception, and here we are, back at 4.1 cents, with fundamentals stronger than ever. That's the part people forget. They see price weakness and assume the story is done, but every past cycle, we've seen this exact same behavior. Disbelief at the bottom, euphoria at the top. I'll tell you my personal opinion. I don't know if Kaspa hits $4, but I absolutely believe this is the cycle where Kaspa becomes widely recognized in the industry, not as a meme, not as a hype coin, but as real infrastructure. And what happens when recognition arrives? Valuation follows. Every time. This is the calm before the storm. Now this next story, this one hits a different level, because it's not just price, it's not just liquidity, this is long-term survival stuff. So Kaspa Lion has shared a fascinating behind-the-scenes look at a recent discussion between Ori Newman and members of the Kaspa core team, including Jonathan Sompolinsky, who you all know as the father of the GhostDAG protocol. The topic? Quantum readiness, 100 blocks per second, and the future of cryptography. Look, we don't talk about quantum threats in crypto enough, but at some point, whether it's 5 years from now or 15, we will get a world where quantum computing becomes a genuine security threat to blockchains that rely on classical signatures. Kaspa is not waiting to react. They're building toward a quantum-resilient architecture right now, and this is where the 100 blocks per second scaling comes in. Because to integrate post-quantum signatures like Dilithium or Falcon, you need the bandwidth, you need throughput, and you need a decentralized network capable of handling the overhead. Kaspa is setting the stage for that. This is the difference between a chain that survives the next decade and one that becomes obsolete. And you know what I love about this? It shows you exactly how the team thinks. Long-term, methodical, prepared. They don't chase hype cycles, they build for longevity. Replies under the post were basically a mix of amazement and finally, someone is thinking about this. And yeah, there were criticisms too. Price performance, adoption delays, all the usual noise. But I'll say this, projects that think 10+ years ahead are usually the ones that matter when the dust settles. We've waited long enough, it's finally happening. And speaking of things finally happening, let's talk about Igra Labs, because their roadmap is huge. So Daily Kaspa highlighted the new Igra Labs roadmap, and this one genuinely feels like the beginning of a major expansion for the Kaspa ecosystem. Here's the timeline. Next week, open sourcing begins. In about 2 weeks, Igra Node V2 drops, foundation for Mainnet. December 2025, closed Igra Mainnet goes live for community node operators. January 2026, a testers plus token generation event. Igra distributed to validators. February 2026, whitelisted Mainnet with integrations plus liquidity. Then, final testing leads to a permissionless network. This is how you scale a layer 2 with real decentralization, not by promising the world, but by laying out a structured rollout with community participation baked in. The big one here is January 2026, a testers and the token generation event. Because distributing Igra directly to validators creates a natural incentive loop. Validators secure the network, validators receive tokens, network grows, ecosystem expands. And I need to emphasize this. Igra isn't a random side project, it's a scaling layer built specifically for Kaspa's BlockDAG architecture, designed for sub-second transactions and near-instant confirmations. And this roadmap tells me 2 things. 1, they're confident. 2, they're ready. This is the kind of development that usually flies under the radar until suddenly people wake up and realize, oh, Kaspa has a full ecosystem now. And by the time that realization hits, early participants are already positioned. The setup couldn't look better. Now, let me leave you with a little perspective before we wrap up. Listen, I know the market's been rough. I know Kaspa hasn't had the price action people wanted these past months, and trust me, I've seen every cycle, every chart, every moment of disbelief. But what we covered today, this is how bottoms form. This is how ecosystems mature. This is how real value gets built. Slowly, quietly, consistently. So stay patient, stay positive, it's all coming together. And truly, I appreciate every single one of you tuning in. This community means the world to me, and I love showing up here every day to break down the markets with you. If you found this helpful, smash that like button, drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe. We've got another massive update coming tomorrow. Not financial advice, just one guy sharing his perspective, same as always. This is Gold Rush Crypto Daily. Keep your eyes on the charts, your heart in the game, and let's get rich together.